Good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to deliver this talk on creativity in everyday life. I base this presentation on the lecture by Ken Robinson, a legend on the topic of living creatively, one who has held this view that being schooled is not a good idea because schools have a way of killing a person's creativity. That would imply that most of us are born creative, or rather, all of us are born creative. And we were probably waiting for this moment to be reminded by an educationist like Ken Robinson that we need to live in the element. Incidentally, The Element is a book by Ken Robinson that brings together in one place his very interesting, illuminating discussion on how we need to have unique perspectives. We are all capable of unique perspectives, and how having that would lead us to our element. The point that this lecture would try to emphasize is that we are not getting enough out of our lives if we are not living in the element. The slide shows Ken Robinson, and the discussion on the element begins with a few Epiphany stories, and I have for this class 4 Epiphany stories. An epiphany is a sudden illumination. The word comes from religious discussions where individuals are known to suddenly have a flash of enlightenment. Their life changes because they are able to see things with a new clarity, a new perspicacity. The first Epiphany story is titled "The Girl Who Drew God." The situation is like this. It's a class where children are expected to draw pictures. Teacher has announced that they would have a certain amount of time to complete the pictures. However, there's one girl in this class who seems to be distracted or indifferent to what is happening around her, while all the other children are busy getting their pictures, their ideas on paper. The teacher does not realize that the girl is meditating on an important idea. A few moments to go for the bell, the girl pulls out her paper and starts working with a frenzy. And the curious teacher goes up to her and wants to know what she is doing, only to be reminded by the girl that she is drawing a picture of God. Now, like most intelligent teachers, and most adults would like to be seen as intelligent, the teacher asks a question, a very predictable question. But nobody has seen God. And the child If she were a normal child, would have felt a little disappointed, a little upset by this question, because that question is laden with discouragement. But this was a special child. She was not willing to give up. She replies to the teacher that maybe nobody has seen God, but soon everybody will. Now, what are the class's inferences? We would know that it is necessary for a very creative person to first have an idea. The beginning of creativity begins with an idea. You need to have an idea. That's just the beginning. We would also need to believe in this idea. Having an idea is not enough. Sometimes, if that is the first time the idea appears in the world, then there is not going to be anybody who would back it. There are more naysayers to an original idea. There are more people who would discourage an innovative idea. So it is necessary that we need to believe in our idea, and that is step number 2. And having belief in our idea, we would need to back our idea up. Now, that is what would set us apart from others. That is what would define us as creative human beings. Have an idea, believe in the idea, and back it up, because you cannot expect the world to back up your idea. That being the first Epiphany story, we move on to the next Epiphany story, which is the story of Gillian Lynn. This story is about an unusual child, a hyperactive child, one who is quite irrepressible and presents a problem for the teacher. Teachers like students to be seated in their chairs, at their desks. Teachers want them to respond to their cues. It's very difficult, something like a black swan situation, when you have a child who is hyperactive, who does not follow the norms, who is all over the place. And so this teacher decides to call the mother. The teacher tells the mother that there's something psychologically wrong with the child, because in the eyes of the teacher, while all of the children are normal, this is an abnormal child. But the mother does not give up. The mother takes the advice of the teacher sincerely and calls on a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist, it turns out, is a wise person, one who was holding a conversation with the mother even as she was registering Gillian Lynn's movements. She saw that the child had a tendency to shake her legs even when she was seated. A restless child, all right. But then she suggests that she and the girl's mother would leave the room, and before they leave the room, the psychiatrist puts a record on the player, and there is music soon wafting in that hall. When she discovers that she is all alone, Gillian Lynn leaves her chair and starts dancing to the beat and rhythm of the music in the hall. The psychiatrist gets a solution. The mother gets the solution to the problem that she has been looking for. The psychiatrist tells the mother that Gillian Lynn must go to school but must not go back to that conventional school. She advises the mother to put Gillian Lynn in a dance school. Mother sees meaning in this advice. Gillian Lynn goes to dance school. The rest is history. We would soon hear about Gillian Lynn as one of the finest dancers, one of the most creative performers on stage. Now, what are your possible inferences? It is important to see the role of the mother. All of us are creative, but we also have our problems. It helps to have somebody who understands us. It helps to have this understanding person take critical and important decisions on our behalf. And hence, we understand that in this saga of creativity that unfolds, we would see the importance of a mentor. We need mentors who can understand us, even with our failings, and who would be able to read our situation in order to give us a better idea to manage ourselves and our creativity. We first saw the story of the girl who drew God, where we saw that we first need an idea, we need to believe in the idea, and we need to back the idea up. Story number 2 about Gillian Lynn. There is the place and importance, a crucial importance of a mentor in our lives. I now move on to the third Epiphany story that Ken Robinson talks about. Now, this is a story which is about ideas, as in Epiphany number 1. It's about mentors, as in Epiphany number 2, but it is a lot more. There are more dimensions to creativity, and that would unfold with the story of Matt Groening. Matt Groening was a talented young man. He had plenty of time in his school because he was very quick with his work, and there was plenty of time to while away. Matt Groening developed the art of doodling, and by and by he realized that he was very good at making caricatures of people around him. So here was a man who could turn people into cartoons, into caricatures. And Matt Groening also had a couple of other passions. Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, was one who also had a passion for words. And some of the writers whom he fancied were James Thurber. He liked James Thurber because Thurber has a fine ability that any writer would dream of possessing, the ability to communicate with words, pictures. James Thurber was a master of providing visual images through words, a remarkable quality. And Matt Groening also went on to read a couple of life narratives of John Lennon, who has a biographical narrative called In His Own Right, in which the narrative is a mix of both words and pictures. Matt Groening gets his epiphany. He realizes that he is himself a very gifted caricaturist, cartoonist. He has the passion for words, and he brings them together in a synergistic moment when words and pictures come together to be an important contribution to American popular culture called The Simpsons. That's Matt Groening for you on the slide. We move on to the fourth Epiphany story of Dr. Paul Samuelson, the first American to win a Nobel Prize. Paul Samuelson, story of Paul Samuelson is about being in the right place at the right time. So we've had three Epiphany stories. The first one, the girl who drew God, about having an idea, believing in the idea, and backing up the idea. The story of Gillian Lynn, of the necessity to have a mentor who would be able to read our situation and give us useful, timely advice. And the third is the case of Matt Groening, where he synergistically combines his abilities and his passions together to construct a creative expression called the comic strip called The Simpsons. The fourth Epiphany story of Paul Samuelson is about a schoolboy who accidentally enters the class of a famous mathematician at the University of Chicago. He is thrilled to be in the world of mathematics, a world where reality is interpreted in terms of numbers, figures, symbols. And he was so fascinated that he took the decision that would define him later on in life. The decision that he would be a mathematician. He went on to do mathematics, all right, but he also had humanistic concerns, and he thought he would be able to contribute to humanity by reading everyday reality in economic terms, where his mathematics did provide interesting models. Paul Samuelson would go on to make a name as one of the finest economists in the post-war era, and among the first to win a Nobel Prize, and the first American to win the Nobel Prize for economics. There are three limitations in this discussion on creativity. All of us are creative, but we also need to understand that there are limitations, and we need to work within this limitation. Understanding the limitation, we would also be able to see to what extent we would outgrow these limitations. Limitation number one would be understanding the range of our capacities. We are all capable of everything, but we would have a capacity for certain activities. We need to understand what is the range of each one's capacity. I may be capable of solving a few problems in mathematics. But do I have the capacity for a life in mathematics? I may be capable of singing a few lines of a popular song, but do I have the capacity for music, of a career in music? We need to discriminate between what we are capable of, and there all of us are capable of everything, and what is the capacity that we have. And there we would be able to understand that we have a capacity for certain things more than for all the other things. And having understood the range of our capacities, we would need to map our capacities into one holistic frame. This would be the way we would configure our abilities. All our capacities coming together. The case of Matt Groening is illustrative. He had the capacity for caricaturing. He had the passion and the capacity for understanding words and working with words, and he brought them together synergistically. So it's trying to map compatible capacities into one holistic configuration that would define us as a creative person. And the third one, how much of our creative pursuits have the potential for growth and change. Now that is an indicator. Change along with growth would indicate how much purchase we get out of living creatively. So it is necessary to understand if our activities can give us purchase in terms of growth and change. These are the three limitations. Understanding the range of our capacities, bringing the capacities together into one holistic configuration, and the third one, understanding how much potential there is for growth and change. Ken Robinson describes the element as the coming together of two important ingredients. One's natural aptitude and personal passion. These are two important critical spheres. We may not be able to put whatever we think is our natural aptitude on paper. We would probably want to say that we are capable of a lot of things on our CV. But standing in front of the mirror, introspecting, we would understand that something else is our natural aptitude. There are innumerable stories of individuals who, having been successful outwardly, still have felt so much empty within themselves because they were doing things in a different sphere outside their natural aptitude. Now, we need to discover very early this natural aptitude and also see what we are passionate about at a personal level. And it's the coming together of natural aptitude and personal passion that would create the element, that would bring us to the element, that would make us live in the element. Now, the element connects us to three fundamental entities. Entity number one is a sense of identity. It satisfies the question, who am I? And what am I? And it satisfies the second important ingredient, a sense of purpose. We need to believe that we've come into the world with a purpose. We need to believe that no matter what has happened in the past, this moment on, there is a purpose for which we are still alive, for which we need to move on, for which we need to work, and there is so much to do. And the third one is a sense of well-being. A happy person is a healthy person. A happy person is one who believes that his life has a purpose, and a happy person is happy because he also believes, is satisfied with the identity that he has constructed out of this creative ferment. Now, the question, how do you discover the element? There cannot be a mathematical formula. If one adopts these methods, if one takes to a creative life methodological, having an idea, believing in the idea, backing the idea, discovering the mentor very early and working with the mentor, synergizing natural aptitude with personal passion to be creative, being at the right place at the right time and deciding very passionately what one really wants to do, so that one has a sense of identity, one sees a purpose to his life, and one feels good about life. And the combination would take one to his or her aptitude. That is when we trigger the intuitive part of our system, and we would be intuitively led to our aptitude, which would eventually lead to the element. There are 4 stages in this journey towards one's aptitude. Number 1 is we need to say, like the girl in the first story, I get it, the idea of God. And then we need to say, like Gillian Lynn, who loved dancing, I love it. And then we need to say, like Matt Groening, who created The Simpsons, I want it. And when you are able to say, I get it, I love it, I want it, then your intuition would show you where you would be able to get it. It would show you when you have arrived. There are 2 important ways in which we in a complex society would be able to arrive at our moment of discovering the element. 1, to be in a situation of groupthink, to be in an environment where people, systems, and situations enable our creative pursuits, to be with people who are encouraging, with mentors who have the time to support us, and to be in environments where we feel creatively stimulated. And that is the first slide on groupthink, having a conducive environment that would facilitate this growth. And the next one is identifying all the compatible elements that can be combined together the way Matt Groening combined cartooning with words in a synergistic alchemy and create something extraordinary, which Ken Robinson would say in ordinary terms is living in the element. Thank you very much for a great opportunity to share some ideas on living creatively.